Hi guys, it's Becca. I just wanted to talk to you for a minute about how to make sourdough the simplest possible way I have found. It's not the only way, there's lots of ways to do it, but this is the simplest way that I have found, and I'll just take you through the steps and show you how simple making sourdough bread can be. So you start with 2 cups of water, and of course you will need a sourdough starter or mother, which you can usually get from a friend, or you can buy it online and you'll have to do some work to actually get it up and going. And ideally it should be freshly fed. I think we fed this like yesterday. My son and I both work on it, so it should have a little bit of bubbles in there, and I can see some bubbles. I don't know if you can, but I'm gonna pour in about a 1/4 cup of starter into my water here, and I'll hold this up so you can see it. There's my starter. And ideally some of it will float, which I've got a few little floaties, and it's not as freshly fed as a lot of people will say. You know, make sure you feed it within a couple hours, or feed it within even 12 hours. This has not been fed within the last 12 hours, but it's still gonna work, and I will show you because I've done this before. I cheat a lot with my sourdough, and I just want you to know that you can cheat too and still enjoy delicious sourdough. So that was 2 cups of water and a 1/4 cup of starter. Then I'm gonna add 4 cups of flour, and you kind of will start to get a feel for the texture of your bread and how soft or dense you would like it to be. And of course you can use any type of flour. White flour does yield, this is just organic, unbleached white flour. Do use unbleached flour. White flour will yield kind of a fluffier bread in general, but you can use any kind of flour if you would like to. I have friends who do gluten-free sourdough. I have friends who do spelt sourdough. I have done sprouted spelt before. It does yield a denser loaf. I have not figured out how to make that really nice and fluffy, but it's very healthy bread. And then you're gonna add 1 tablespoon of salt. You can add sea salt or mineral salt, or like the pink mineral salt, or whatever kind you like. And then you're gonna stir it up. And when you're stirring, let me see if I can tilt this down so you can see what I'm doing here. So you're just stirring and stirring, and it's gonna feel soupy at first. And I really like to use this little just cheap free Walmart spatula that I got in a gift bag, but you can use anything. I just love this one because it just is so handy for scraping the sides. And I like to keep my sides scraped because sourdough is a little bit harder to wash. I mean, it's not that hard. You just have to like soak it and stuff. But I just like to keep the sides of my bowl scraped as I'm doing it. And as you can see here, it's getting a little bit more like a dough, like a bread dough. It's never going to be quite as, not sticky, quite as dense as a lot of bread dough where you would like knead it with your hands. You could knead it with your hands, but it'll end up being pretty sticky in the end here. So I usually just use the spoon, and I just go around and kind of scoop under, lift, and smash it down. But you could, of course, use your hands to do the same motion and like an actual kneading motion. And I might have added a little extra flour this time. I usually add just enough flour to where, yeah, it's still a little sticky. Like, it's not really floury enough to do that for very long. You end up with pretty sticky hands. And then I go back to this, keep going, make sure your salt's mixed in really well, and you have kind of a rough dough there. And it's not gonna end up like smooth and elastic like what you might be used to if you're used to making bread. It's just gonna be a rough ball of dough. Now, if you let it sit about an hour, it will gain some elasticity, and the next time you go to do this, it's gonna be a lot smoother when you're done. And each time, so after that you take the time to, you're just gonna do the same motion, up and push down. and you lift it up and you push it down. And you kind of just lift up an edge of the dough and you push it down. And you're gonna do this kind of, I mean, as many times as you feel like over the next 12 hours, 24 hours, 72 hours, however long you want to leave it, depending on how sour you want your bread, how much you want it to kind of digest the gluten and all of that. But I like to leave it overnight. So I'll do this. I'll probably do one more of these like lift and turns before I go to bed. And then I'm gonna let it sit on the counter overnight covered with just a cloth. And then in the morning, I'm gonna do a few more and pop it in the oven. So I will be back to talk about that in a little bit.